Hello, I'm Mardo, and I was browsing YouTube today and I came across a video that kind of caught my attention. It's called My Descent into the Alt-Right Pipeline. It's created by a guy named Faraday Speaks, or a channel named Faraday Speaks. Came out March 21st. It's a little bit old, but I still wanted to talk about it because it brings up kind of an issue that I have personal experience with, and disagree with him about a few things, about a few assumptions that he makes about his experience and the people that he watches and things like that, or he watched along the way. So the video is about his experience with YouTube and certain content creators that he considers alt-right, that take him from what he describes as a liberal high school student to a more radicalized, nearly alt-right, as he describes, adult, or at least college student, or wherever he made it to. So I think one thing to keep in mind here is that a lot of people have different experiences when they're first predisposed to content that he describes. And I'll just list the content creators that he talks about. He talks about Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Lauren Southern, Gavin McInnes. There are a few others, but nothing that rings a bell. Mostly because I know those people. I know those content creators. I know those political talking heads, and I watch them. I do watch a lot of their videos a lot of the time. There are things about them that I would consider to be, I don't like. There are things that I don't agree with, as a politically active person. And I can recognize those things in that content and take it out. But there are some people who are not predisposed to the same sort of conditions that I was. I was raised Catholic, and so I have a certain set of morals inherent in that. But I've definitely questioned that, and I've stopped being Catholic at points and come back to it, and there are things that I've settled, myself with morally, so I know where I stand on certain issues and where my faith, influences me. I also took, as ironic this may sound, an AP government course, AP US government course in high school, and it was really informative, and it did a lot to tell me how government works, how politics works on a larger scale, at least in the United States, and I wasn't aware of that. I was somewhat politically involved. I had opinions, but they weren't well formed. They weren't well thought out, and they kind of. I was a high schooler. You can't really expect too much from that, in the way of intelligent political discussion. And even now, I have a lot to learn and a lot to understand about where I stand, on certain issues. There are a lot of issues I don't take stances on. But Faraday Speaks in his process. He says he was a liberal in high school. He believed in in environmental causes, and he tried to fight for equality in whatever ways that he thought was socially fit. And I, at one point, was similar. At one point, I thought I thought of Bernie Sanders as a great idea. I thought, socialism was something that was very attractive. I was a sophomore in high school, and I was, raised in a way that would be, raised in middle school and elementary school. That's what's taught. Everyone should be treated, given equity and given the opportunities necessary to succeed in society. And the thing is, that's obviously true. That's obviously true that people should be given opportunities. I don't think people should be given equity, but there are perfectly reasonable reasons to believe that. What he describes is he gets to YouTube in his high school years, and he sees videos from Ben Shapiro or Steven Crowder or Stephen Molyneux is the one that he mentions first. And I don't like the guy. I don't like Stephen Molyneux or Stefan. And I think that his videos they're angry at best. They're not comprehensive, and I'm not not one to sit down and want to watch an hour of him ranting about some specific topic that I might not even have any interest in. But that's a personal experience. So I didn't come into the situation that he came into in the same way. But I did end up watching things like Milo Yiannopoulos destroy libtards and in summer 2016 before the election, and there's a certain like culture that it drags you in when you watch those sort of videos, and you keep getting recommended them on YouTube, and it's funny, and it's funny to an extent. The first couple times you watch those videos, it's endearing, but it's obvious that there's not too much content there. There's not too much intelligence behind the feminism is cancer sort of rhetoric. And so you sort of seek out things like Ben Shapiro talking and debating with students and destroying liberals with facts and logic, and that those sorts of things, they did influence me in a pretty heavy way. Ben Shapiro's videos and his debates. And there are some times when I go back to it and I think, yeah, I still agree with that. And there are a lot of times where I come back and I think I don't agree with that whatsoever. And I think the guy is, he's aggressive, and he's a little bit too serious about a lot of issues, and he takes certain issues to heart a little bit too much so, I think. So his opinion can be tainted by personal. I mean, I'm referring to the fact that he's a Jew, and he believes that Israel should be a country, or has the right to be a country, and there's he's disregarding parts of the debate on the topic in order to further the fact that is his bias. So you start with those videos, and then you start going towards more involved videos. He said Jordan Peterson was one of those. And I think Jordan Peterson has some interesting qualities about him, about his content and about the way he presents his opinions. I think most of his political opinions are somewhat non-existent. He doesn't really have a comprehensive opinion on anything, really. And I think that is strategic in a way to keep his reputation in some sort of state where he can get he can get a lot of people to go see him. I don't think I would agree with his politics in a lot of instances, and he describes himself as a liberal. I don't know if that's why I wouldn't agree with him, but he presents his research and his expertise in psychology in a very convincing manner. Honestly, it feels like you're really getting into something intellectual and something special when you start, watching his lectures, and you go down a list of like 20 of them, hour long, and it's very influential, and it really changes your outlook on a lot of things. I think that it is completely necessary to understand that those outlook changes are not necessarily bad, even if he says bad things at times, even if he says, sexist or otherwise offensive things at times, or doesn't quite understand the full situation. You can take information from his messages, his talks, things like personality and how that affects political ideas and how that affects your outcome in the world, and the metrics behind that. And you can understand that you need to be aware of those moving into creating an ideology, coming into your own and having political opinions. I think it's necessary to understand those sorts of things, because a lot of the times it's not something that someone can control necessarily, the way that what they believe, and don't normally want to change that because of their personality in some senses. But anyway, I don't think it's necessarily. He's not alt-right by any means. I think he sort of disguises possible, hatred towards certain communities or whatever well enough that it's not going to taint people if he does hold those sorts of hatred, that sort of hatred. But I do watch Steven Crowder frequently, and you might say like, oh, Steven Crowder, he believes in conspiracy theories, and he's like a Christian nationalist in a sense, where he believes that Christianity is like, that's how you should run a country. And having, being a Christian and having that sort of faith, I can say that Steven Crowder is funny. I think he's funny. I don't agree with him on nearly anything. So I can watch his stuff and understand what I'm going to take out of it, what I'm going to laugh at, what sort of news I'm going to get from it, and what is relevant, what is tainted, in a sense. And I'm going to, come out of those videos with a better understanding of the issue. I don't think Faraday Speaks, the subject of this response, I don't think he does that. I think he watches these videos, or he did. He watched these videos, and he took every bit of what they said to heart. He thought that every single bit of what he said, it was absolutely reliable, and he needed to make sure that he integrated it into his thinking. And I don't think you should ever do that with anyone. I don't care how trustworthy they may seem, how intelligent they may seem. There are a lot of ideas that they have that are terrible, and there are a lot of ideas that they have are great. You need to take what you think is best and apply that to your life. I understand when you're in a rabbit hole, as he describes, it might be difficult to see exactly where that is, where those best things are in those opinions of those commentators. He also describes a situation where that got him out effectively of the hole that he was in, the rut that he was in, and that was when he saw I guess a Twitch streamer, Destiny, destroy in a debate Lauren Southern about immigration. And Lauren Southern has an interesting perspective on things now that she's been to Turkey and such, and seen the plight of immigrants. And I think that she's probably empathetic in some respects. I don't agree with most people's policies on immigration. I don't agree with Steven Crowder's, Ben Shapiro's, anybody's opinions on immigration. But I can look at that and say, I can look at those opinions and say that that's not alt-right. And in a lot of respects, it's not even racist. It's just, it's a traditional conservative opinion that you should keep the people who are in your country, and the people who are out of your country, outside of your country. And that might seem hateful. I don't think it necessarily is. I think it's just a place of worry, maybe unnecessary worry. And when you look at statistics, like maybe the crime that's committed by illegal immigrants in America, and you don't consider the full picture, then it is really, really damning. And you should consider the whole picture. You should consider the people who are here and who are moving, and not just the people who are committing the crimes. Have a reasonable stance on the thing. It's not a binary issue. That's another thing. A lot of these stances, a lot of these issues are not binary. And I honestly stand somewhere in the middle on a lot of them, yet I will not consider myself liberal by any means. So I think that's something to consider when you're talking about these sorts of things. It's not, if you see a video, then you have to agree with them and you need to go down this rabbit hole. And you shouldn't then be changed in your opinions because someone debated another person and said some interesting and some insightful things. I think Faraday Speaks is, if he's telling the truth, and I think he's pretty genuine about his story. He doesn't come off as somebody who would respond to these sorts of situations reasonably, or at least not as many people would. And maybe that's just an assumption on my part. Maybe that's just because of my experience that I believe this. And most people are not like me, and most people watch a video in its entirety and consider it as one whole piece, and not just several opinions that might be stitched together by a story. Anyway, he also mentions ContraPoints in the video, who responded with a reply thanking him, and I understand the appeal of ContraPoints, and I think it's a necessary perspective to have in a political debate, so it's balanced. I don't think her commentary is always the best. I mean, nobody's is always the best, so you have to be, you have to consider the perspective reasonably. Next, I wanted to touch on how he considered, you know, like the Jewish question in his really deep dives into alt-right, into the alt-right. I think that those sorts of things, those sorts of opinions, they're really dangerous for a person. There's something really poisonous about a worldview that that takes you into this hole where you believe that, you know, a certain race is responsible for a lot of issues in your own life or in the lives of others, or that immigrants are responsible, or that Jews are responsible. I think I've met people who think like that, and I've talked to people online who think like that, and it's obvious that there's not much you can really do to convince them. The worst thing you can do is to tell them that they're racist or to alienate them in some way, because then there's no other place to go. You're a part of the conspiracy, and they don't really have an outlet. You can... I don't know how to address the issue. I'm not going to act like I can. I'm not sure whatsoever to do about people who are radicalized to that degree, to that extent. And he says that he wasn't necessarily to that point, but he did, you know, have biases against people of different races. And having heard the arguments by these YouTubers and these commentators about you know, race realism and about the impacts of race on IQ and a lot of other questions, a lot of other big topics, I don't understand how he could have gotten quite to that situation, quite to that opinion on his own, just on those opinions of the people in the video. I think he probably reached that opinion through some bias of his own, some experience that he had in the real world. It doesn't really equate to me. I've been in a situation where I've been watching a lot of these videos and I've believed a lot of what's going on, and I've you know, gone down the rabbit hole to some extent, and then when I get in the real world for about a quarter of a second, I realize, oh, I probably shouldn't have believed everything I just heard, and I need to reevaluate exactly what I just heard, and then I can reasonably go through and consider the you know, what I believe, what my position's on. It's not hard necessarily to do it. I think Faraday Speaks is a bit... There's something strange about his story. It just doesn't resonate with me. And I've had the same, you know, experience as him. I've seen all these videos, and I've, you know, become a libertarian possibly due to them. I haven't seen that, you know, that stance switch. But I've experienced the same situation. My opinion on it is that I don't think I'm going to change my opinion to that extent. I don't think I'm going to, you know, swing back to liberal as I was in sophomore year. I think that it's going to take a lot more to convince me that my, at least my worldview, I guess, is necessarily like too biased in one way. I understand his opinion. Of course, he talked about the New Zealand shooting, and that's what he said. You know, really struck him as wanting to put out the video and get out his opinions on the matter. And that shooting it's a travesty. There's something about it that really just tears at you. At least in my case. And I was on, you know, Discord servers, and I did talk with friends who made memes of the video and of his manifesto and such. And I read his manifesto, and I think a lot of the things that you find on the internet, you can't equate those with your opinions on things. You can look at a meme of the shooting of the incident in New Zealand and say that it's, you know, completely insensitive and there's no way it could ever be funny, and somebody else thinks it's funny, and it's difficult to come to a conclusion where you say that, you know, you can tell what's right in that situation. You can say definitively that anyone can say whatever they want, or definitively that, you know, what that person posted, that image or that video, is definitely taking a step too far. It's not an easy distinction, and it's not one that I think anyone should really make. I think it's I think you should, you know, consider other people's perspectives on the matter. Comedy obviously is somewhat subjective. And as a person who enjoys really edgy content, it does that sometimes does bring up my own opinions on things. Am I laughing at something because it's at the expense of somebody? Am I laughing at something because it's not my problem? Because it's shocking? And I don't know. I really don't know. But it's funny, and I'm gonna laugh, and I can't control that necessarily. I do agree that there's an issue with internet culture taking people from one point that is necessarily that is probably not necessarily bad, somewhat healthy in opinions and stances on issues, and taking that stance and transforming it into something radical, something potentially devastating to people, potentially world destroying to people. And I'm going to cover that. I'm going to go on this channel. I'm going to go in depth on what my opinions are about that issue, and I'm going to try to take it down and deconstruct exactly what goes on. Because it's not enough to say that YouTube videos turn you into a Nazi. It's not enough to say that people like Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder are alt-right hate mongers, because I don't think they are. I think they're just, you know, edgy comedians who have a political opinion. And it's not right to disregard those, you know, the people who are in those positions as mean or as, you know, morally wrong, because you yourself are a liberal. It's a different opinion, and you both have probably, in some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases, you might have the same goal to, you know, to treat everyone with a certain amount of dignity. But you just have a disagreement about how you get to that state. So anyway, I think that's really all I'm going to be able to cover from that video. There's a lot going on. There's a lot I disagree with. I just wanted to get my thoughts out about it. And I really do want to get a video on, you know, a more finished, more complete video on the process by which someone becomes radicalized by the internet. You know, it's really a travesty in a lot of situations, and I don't think it's because of YouTube. I think that you can get to a certain point in your political or social stances, and then you realize this is as far as I need to go because I agree with this, and I don't think this is morally incorrect. I think this is as moral as I'm going to get in my own worldview. And that's not what Faraday Speaks did. He went further, way further. And was disillusioned by videos somewhere along the line. I don't know. It's not the case for a lot of people. Or at least in my case. I don't know. Anyway, I'll be making that video soon, hopefully. And I hope this was somewhat comprehensive. I kind of jumped all over the place. But I really appreciate the watch. Really appreciate the view. Because it's a conversation that needs to take place. And it's not necessarily taking place in an intelligent way for other people to understand and other people to comment on. So, thank you for your time, and I hope you'll stick around to see my future content, and hopefully that content on more complex social issues and complex solutions to those issues. Thank you.